dreams aren't big enough, if they don't scare you, if they don't keep you up at night, if they don't motivate you when you don't feel like it, they don't get you out of bed, they're not big enough.
Facts.
Your dreams should be so big, so astronomical, so large that it should just scare you into action.
Facts.
You should be wanting to chase after it every single day.
Facts podcast, that is faith, action, culture, truth, and solidarity. I am Cedric Scott Jr.
And I am Jamonte Banks.
Man, what's good, Jamonte? We got through episode 1, man. It felt good. Tell me what you think. How you feeling, man?
Dog, I'm just, man, thoughts become things, man. Like, that's kind of like what I've been wrapping my head around. Like, yesterday when we had saw that it was done and it was actually on the platforms, I immediately played it. And I was, like, cutting hair, and my uncle listening to it, and Justin came over, and then I had to go do some cardio. So I'm actually doing cardio on the elliptical, but I'm listening to us on the,
That's
crazy.
While
I'm doing my cardio, man.
Yeah.
It's mind blowing that we made that pivot so quickly, and it's actually out there into the world now. I
know, and now it's we there's no turning back. we committed to it. Now we gotta stick with it, and that's good though. I mean, I think that having these types of pushes are really going to be beneficial, not just for us, but for other people as well. So it's a blessing, man, to share this platform with you and. And just, share what we generally do on a regular basis anyway with so many other people. And hopefully, whoever this touches, whether they are checking it out through YouTube, or any other platform, through Anchor, in terms of podcasts, we just, number one, we really appreciate it. And we just want to say that we hope that you continue to come back and that you actually get something from this. Feel free to reach out, let us know, that you are getting something from this, and because for us as men, and just as husbands and people in general, our main goal is really to try to give to other people, and continue pushing things forward. So yeah, with that being said, thanks for being here, Jamonte. Always love and respect, man. So today, when I want to kind of jump into, I was thinking earlier. I was thinking about a few different things that I've seen on like social media and things like that, in terms of like relationships, and there's like that whole movement of like hashtag goals and relationship goals and all that stuff. But I think attacking it more from the lens of relationships as a whole, and then just thinking about just basically how relationships are the most, in my opinion, Jamonte, you could definitely jump in and let me know what your thoughts are. Like the most valuable form of currency, in terms of just living on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I definitely agree, man. Like, relationships is everything. Whenever we, from the time we was a kid to the time we go into our careers and everything else, like relationships are pivotal. And we just changed the name of it. Like, it's networking when you get older and doing that and whatnot. But it's all the same, man. It's like it's the same nuance. It doesn't change much. It's a gateway to new opportunities. And when other relationships are like kind of lost in the sauce, they can also take you away from things too. So, man, relationships are definitely essential to life. Right,
definitely. I mean, that's facts. Honestly, just considering basically all of the relationships and all of the aspects of life that I can think about in terms of my own experience, which have led me, to where I am or to how I am and how I interact with other people, professionally, personally, on every single level. And, even just thinking about, the two of us, this relationship, and, how we've built this from, basically nothing. How we just met, as coming into teaching with Teach for America in D.C. back in 2014, and how it, you just see things really grow and blossom and flourish. And then they turn into, stuff like these types of endeavors where we're getting on here,
we are,
talking crazy and just, and loving it, but it's a beautiful thing, man. And when I think about that at the essence, at its core, the one image for some reason that comes to my mind, and I was thinking about this earlier, is that usually that mother at the graduation, you know, everybody knows, especially in our culture, right? We all know like that lady who's, that's my baby. That lady, like that mother who is just elated, ecstatic, to see their child really reach a pinnacle in life. And you know, generally it's not even, you know, just the one person, it's sections of families. I remember in college, my family came down to Virginia State, and they were like way up in the bleachers, but I heard them. I heard them for sure. And you know, I think that to me really just talks directly to, you know, how important and how beneficial relationships are. And you know, just, you know, feel free to jump in. I just think about that image, that aspect, that environment, that feeling when I really sit down and say, you know, what are good relationships like, you know?
Yeah.
You know, and this, you know, so definitely.
Oh man, I mean, honestly, bro, I think like going back to that picture that you just painted, like I can definitely resonate with that because, you know, I've seen it, I've experienced it firsthand, and so have you. And it's like,
For sure.
I thought about when you was painting that picture, I thought about how relationships, family, we take it for granted, right? We don't really, you know, they take care of us. We're a baby, we got to grow up, but there's even relationships in families, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I think those relational aspects play a role in why they're so enthused, so invested, and so excited in those big moments, because they've sacrificed so much in those relationships as a family member, as a mother, as a father, as a brother, as an auntie, a grandparent, an uncle, or aunt, to help you get to that moment.
Yeah.
And so when they're actually able to see it come to that come to a head, and you actually achieve that goal, and they're there to celebrate you, they're not just celebrating for you.
Right. Exactly.
They're celebrating because they helped you be a part of that. Like we are legacies of our family. So when we accomplish something, they feel like they accomplished it too. And in essence, they have. Yeah. And so I think about it a whole lot. Like, it's not just that relationships are external things. They're also like within our families, we have relationships too.
Easily another stamp. That's facts right there. Because, you know, for us, in a lot of ways, those relationships and, you know, stepping back to, you know, when you're young and things like that, whenever you get to a certain point or you make, you know, some type of achievement or accomplishment, just speaking to your point about other people kind of living vicariously through you, you know, in those times and in those situations, it's like, I don't actually even have my high school diploma, nor do I have my bachelor's degree. My father has them both. Literally, like he has them like posted, like he got them displayed like they're his. And for that, you know, and for him and for all of those people, those relationships, those family members, you know, those things are what really they hold dear to. And, you know, in essence, that's, you know, those are the things that kind of are the foundation and the general makeup, right? My dad, he still has, you know, and I'm pretty sure it's the same thing. You go to your house, your family keeps, you know, all the little keepsakes, right? The trophies from Little League and, you know, all that stuff. But it all is extremely important. You know, it might seem silly at some point, you know, thinking about like the sentimental value of these things, but you know, at the core of it is that's my baby relationship. You know, anybody that has that is definitely lucky, you know, fortunate and blessed, you know, for sure. But I actually want to kind of change and kind of switch gears a little bit, and because usually when we hear relationships, we generally think about that from more of like a romantic standpoint, right? Like we're both married, happily.
Yes.
For sure. And you know, when we start to think about it societally and we say, oh, you know, we're talking about relationships, we get into that idea of, you know, two partners being together and essentially merging as one, right? So, Jamonte, in your experience, in terms of relationships, I mean, you can speak directly, you know, talking about you and your wife. What do you feel like is the greatest aspect, or most essential part of that type of relationship?
Man, I can. Man, we how much time we got?
So pick a couple, I guess.
But no, honestly, man, I think for me and my wife and our union, the greatest gift of our marriage, I think, is the fact that I know without a shadow of a doubt that we have each other's back, right? So a lot of people may not know, but, like my wife is a full-time student, you know what I'm saying? Like, she was pursuing her doctoral degree, and even before we got married, she was like, look, bruh, I'm about to be doing this school thing, and, I'm serious, I'm all in. I met her, she was in her doctoral program, and she was like, it's going to be a lot. And I was like, I got you. Like, I love you, and I got you, and we're going to be good. And that's kind of how it always been. And then, so to that point, I think us having each other back, her not having to worry about, our home situation, our finances and all that kind of stuff while she was still pursuing her doctorate program and trying to finish school and what have you, was a peace of mind that she felt comforted in. And then there was a time where when I left education, like I touched on in our other video, when I left, that was a big moment for us because I was the breadwinner, I was the husband, I was the leader of our household, and yet I felt this urge to leave, and I didn't have a plan necessarily of what that looked like. And the most comforting thing, and the thing that I go back to and I reflected on so much in 2018, is that my wife never questioned it. We talked about it, we prayed about it, we moved forward with it. And since that day, she took it with stride. She was still doing her doctoral program. She had her internship. She was a TA at Howard University, and she picked up a side job just to make extra money and make ends meet while she was pursuing her doctoral program. She never made me feel crazy about it. She never looked at me differently, never treated me differently. She loved me the same. And, that's a feeling that I will forever cherish and hold on to, a moment that I will never forget, because it's just it's stamped, it's solidified. Like, all the things that we said we would do in our marriage, our vows that we promised each other, that we would be there for each other through all the things that we go through, good or bad. And like I said, like, she's everything. She's my Proverbs 31, dog. Like, she's my virtuous woman, because she literally took over with grace and didn't make me feel less than in the process. And still love me unconditionally, man. So I think having each other's back has been like the greatest aspect of our relationship in these 4 years that we've been married, for sure.
Thanks. Shout out to that, man. Just real quick, shout out to Kenesha, man. Like, just because I know you, she putting up with you, man. But nah, seriously though, on that note,
shout out to Boo.
Yeah, definitely. On that note though, just thinking about something that we've recently worked on together. We've actually put out an ebook, the Young Black Husband's Handbook, and I'll make sure I put the link in the description for this video. But one thing we really dive into in that book, which it's a really quick read. I don't even think it's 40 pages long, but Jamonte was supportive enough of me to go ahead and actually write the foreword for it, which was awesome. And I teared up a little bit when I was reading. Now I'm like, oh man, tell me how you really feel about me. But and then you really went into talking deeply about the first virtue, I think, of this podcast, which is the faith portion. So, and then you hear it whenever you talk about your wife. But can you elaborate a little bit more on that piece of it, because I know that's extremely important for you.
Yeah, man. It's extremely important because it's by faith is how we got to the point that we dated and we are even here today, because I've shared it a while ago, and I have a YouTube video that I'm going to post about her, and I told her already, so she already knows it's coming. Man. But when I first met my wife, I had a lot going on in my life, man. I was out here in these streets being young, wild, and reckless, didn't know what I wanted, didn't know who I was. I had no idea who thyself was. And I knew that I didn't want to bring her apart and be a part of any of that. And because I knew she didn't deserve it. She didn't deserve any of the baggage, any of the insecurities, any of the nonsense that I had in store. Right. And so I literally went into my prayer closet, and I was like, look, God, like, you got this woman here. I'm feeling her, I like her a lot, but you know my story. And I said, like, if she's meant to be in my life, then please cast away all the other things that are in my life currently. And I promise that I will cherish her, value her, and do those things. But if it's not meant to be, then Lord, please take her away. Not literally, I love her to death, but me and her couldn't make it happen because I didn't want no problems. And so it literally was from that decision, that moment, that I knew, and I started seeing, like, slowly things started to wash away, dial back and go away, and I was able to really hone in and be the best me for her.
Right.
So it was only because of that we are even here today, because I really truly believe that I didn't want to hurt her. And so it is by faith that we are together. And I cherish her so much because we've been through a lot, and although our lives are a little bit different from our upbringing, like, we've been able to really hold each other down through faith. And I know a lot of times, kind of going to a spirituality piece and religion and what marriage looks like and what it's about and the makeup of it, a lot of the times I talk about it in the foreword. Husband and wife typically not typically, there are times where they may not see eye to eye, and there may be some battling of who's head of the household, who makes, like, who does that kind of thing. And when you have that type of tension, it's typically because, your wife or your spouse may not be confident or comfortable in who you are and knowing yourself and being able to lead both you and her as y'all become one into this union to bring forth whatever you're supposed to bring forth in your marriage. So I've always made sure that I center my decision making. I center all the things that we do in our household around our faith and around our spirituality, so that we are aligned, and that in that there's no turbulence between us whenever we do have to make a pivot or a change, such as when I left my job in 2018. Because I had prayed about it, talked to her about it, and we had came to one accord. It wasn't like a big drag out fight. It was like, as long as I know you're trusting and you're leading by your faith, then I'm gonna follow you too. So I think the reason why we've been able to have such a fruitful marriage in these young 4 years that we've been together is because of my spiritual integrity, if you will, and really holding on to that at every turn to make sure that I'm not leading us as our household astray.
For sure. I mean, and one thing that I really take from you, and just hearing you talk, and then just knowing you and knowing Kanisha and being around you all, is that essentially what we talk about right now, actually circling back to the that's my baby type of image, is you're basically just loving that person out loud, right?
Yeah.
And you're not ashamed, you're not nervous about it, there's no half-stepping. It's just like, it is what it is. I love this person, they're a part of me, and it is what it is. Like, accept it, deal with it, whatever, right? And that's a beautiful part, and I think that's something that we really went into in the book as well. And I know that I definitely tried to. So I actually want to take this time really quickly to touch on one section of the book that actually speaks directly to Black women. And that section is basically dispelling the myth of the angry Black woman, right? Because historically, there has been a misunderstanding or a misdiagnosis, if you will, honestly, of the character of Black women, right? They're angry, they're moody, got an attitude, all those things, which couldn't be further from the truth in terms of looking at it at its core, right? Because, when you really look at the situation, look at the scenario, and think about everything that they've had to endure, right? And also, just real quick, to give the praise that Black women are the most educated people in this country. On top of all of the disparities and issues that they've had to overcome, So, I mean, I just want to take the time right now to love Black women out loud. As the son of a Black woman, the grandson of a Black woman, the husband of a Black woman, like all those things, the brother of two young Black women. It's just extremely important and imperative for us to continue to do that. And I definitely want to just say, a word of appreciation and respect to you for loving, your queen out loud on a regular basis. And, I think that this is something that definitely needs to be completely normalized and happen more often because, one thing that I mentioned in that section is that, black women basically just don't get the credit that they deserve for everything that they do. And, I just want to, take that little, brief stint of time right now and just say, black women, we love you, respect you, appreciate you, and, we'll continue to fight for you for sure. But yeah, just, bouncing back now and thinking about the idea of loving out loud. Jamonte, what are your thoughts in terms of, because usually this is something that we hear in the context of, men for women, right? So thinking about it in reverse, basically, do men need the same type of loving out loud as women do?
So, of course, everyone is different, right? And I think, and the reason why I lead with that is because there, like we talked about in the other podcast, there's no blanketed answer, right? And everyone has their own differences, what they like, what they don't like, or what have you. And I think I would like to kind of come from the perspective of the love languages, right? Like, so I think love languages have a lot to do with what matters to your spouse. So if your wife is trying to do these things like, verbally affirming you or whatever out loud or however that may come to life, if that may not be your love language, then it may not be the way that you're seeking or looking for that loving of out loud, right? Because I speak for myself. Like for me, my love languages are quality time and physical touch. So, I mean, I still will be happy if my boo shouted me out on, Man Crush Monday or whatever, but it may not hit the same if we went and actually took a stroll at the market on the weekend and actually was holding hands and actually enjoyed time together, because that's what means more to me.
Right.
I do think, though, there is a sense of, and I always tell people, it's a sense of desire, right? I think, when we do the things as husbands and lead and love our wives out loud and do those intentional, intimate, and affectionate things that really speak to them, flowers, holding their hands, opening their doors, doing all those things, or making a post about them, or whatever the case may be, doing surprises, keeping things fresh. I think at the end of the day, men in return still want to feel like desired. I think feeling desired is an important aspect of a fruitful and enjoyable marriage and union, because if not, it can kind of grow stale, or it can kind of feel one-sided in a sense. Like, yeah, I'm the husband, I'm the provider. Maybe I shouldn't be so emotional and so worried about, her smacking my butt when I walk past her, or, whatever, like doing something crazy random, you know what I'm saying? Because that just makes that person feel desired, like you want me, like you have, like I'm your man type thing. And some people, for them, they love that. Some people don't really need it, but I think more so than not, it's more so about knowing your husband and really speaking to their love language and keeping that love tank full, so that they can continue the process, right? Keep everything reciprocal, and not that it is a 50-50 or even split of give and take, more so just making sure that it is happening throughout your marriage, you know what I'm saying? Because it can grow. And then I'm pretty sure I'll be honest, I know there's been moments where things kind of grown kind of stale or normal or not as fresh, because we've gotten into the routine of grinding for work or grinding for our goals. And we get so caught up in like waking up early, and I'm an early riser, she not. So there's been times where we don't see each other much.
Yeah.
So we gotta find ways to keep it fresh. So I think the feeling desire, knowing the love languages and speaking to that man's love languages really will keep things fresh, make them feel desired, and make them feel like they are being loved out loud.
Right. I'm sexy too.
I know, right? Shoot.
Take a good look. I mean, I've been doing my dips and push-ups. You know what I mean? So, definitely. That is a solid point. Really understanding who the other person is. And recognizing that certain things are going to hit different, right? And then one thing that you also mentioned, and we discussed in the book too, is touching on the idea of not getting caught up in, expectations or, what you think the norm should be You know, I mean, like those things, they get in the way, you know what I mean? And it just creates, you know, a lot of unnecessary sometimes tension or just, you know, situations that would cause things to, as you say, go stale or, you know, just be an issue for no reason, really. Stuff that can be alleviated, you know, and basically just not even dealt with. But, you know, those roadblocks, they come out, and I think a lot of times what we don't realize is that they are basically a result of our own doing, right? We created them. You know, and we got to be honest at this point. Like, we know it's 2020, right? A lot of that stuff that, you know, our grandparents, great grandparents did, the ideas of, you know, even the roles, you know what I mean, they're not the same, right? It's different. Like my wife, you know, just like your wife works, you know, throughout the entire day. Like my wife is a teacher, and you know, in this situation, you know, with us, especially right now with COVID, at this time and being home, and I work from home, a stay-at-home dad. So of course I'm you know, I'm going to have my son with me, you know, during the day. I actually like to cook, so I cook the meals at the house. You know, and it's all those pieces, but you can't get caught up in those ideas, you know what I mean? Because, you know, going back to what you were saying about love languages and then just understanding, it's like certain things are not going to align to the personality or the value system that, you know, your spouse or your significant other might have, right? So for me, even just talking about, you know, financially, right? When I met my wife, she literally made twice my salary, right? Like, and it was just like, I couldn't, you know, I'm not gonna walk in throwing my chest all around. Look, yeah, I'm the, you know what I mean? I'm the man. It's like, hold on, right? You gotta, you know, be humble. But at the same time, you know, the beautiful part of it is in recognition of that situation, right? And what it really was, you know, especially me being young and just starting out my career at that time, you got to have somebody who is going to be able to see things for what they are, you know, and respond accordingly, and make sure that you don't even feel like, am I doing enough, or do I make enough money? Am I here? Am I really doing my job? And you know, I just, you know, I definitely feel blessed in that regard that, you know, my wife is always somebody who, you know, has had no issue with making me feel secure in myself. You know what I mean? Down to starting a business and, you know, doing a podcast, you know, all these things. It's just like, but I think that some people don't necessarily have that, and then they might not even recognize when the other person has contrary beliefs, right? And sometimes it's fine, but it just doesn't work that way. So, Jamonte, what would you say to someone who they are not getting that reciprocation? Like, what do you think, you know, what would the next steps be if you're not really feeling fulfilled, right?
Well, first, you know, shout out to Andrea, you know what I'm saying? Sits out here loving on her man and stuff and all that good stuff. Man, to that point, to that question you just asked, like, what do you do when you feel empty or when you feel like you're not being poured back into it, when that feeling of reciprocity isn't quite there? First, what I always kind of think about and tell people to do is kind of like just really reflect on yourself, right? Kind of going back to knowing that. So like, what's going on? Like, is everything, are you firing on all cylinders? You know what I'm saying? Like, are you doing everything that you feel like you need to be doing? You know, are you coming from the right place? Are you speaking to that right language? Like, man, I've spent my wheels one time and like realizing that like the things that I do, like getting boot things, like receiving gifts, isn't her love language, isn't her top love language. So I was like, and then I realized that her love language is acts of service. So maybe sometimes it could be that we're giving of ourselves in a way that may not really speak to them in a way that makes them respond, right? So that's one thing that you really want to be in tune with, knowing yourself, like really thinking about like, okay, what am I doing? Am I doing it for the right reasons? And then also, like, are you speaking to your spouse's love languages in a way that they are actually feeling it and actually knowing it, and it can be named? But then another thing that I would say is in the marriage, because, you know, man, communication is like, I know it sounds cliche, but communication is key. You really, really have to be open and honest and vulnerable enough to have those tough conversations. So you can honestly sit down and talk to your wife. And if you're feeling that way, be like, hey, boo, like, you know, things been kind of right. I've been kind of in my own head lately. Like, you know, I just don't feel like I'm being seen or felt or heard or whatever the verb, or whatever the word that you have to use to describe your feelings. But you have to be able to sit down and have those conversations, because if not, then there will never be a opportunity for it to change. And then when you walk around, you know, harboring all those feelings and emotions, and then they can come out to resentment and come out to being distant and disconnected and all those things. And then that's when, you know, all the other troubles come around when you start feeling that way. And so you definitely want to make sure that you don't set yourself up for failure by holding on to those things and being so manly that you think you can handle feeling alone or empty or whatever the word you want to use, because it's okay to feel that way. And it's even more okay for you to talk to your wife about it, because if you're getting married to someone and you can't talk to them, then what are we really talking about? That's a whole nother conversation. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, there's going to be times where you have to have those tough conversations that you wouldn't normally even waste your time with if it wasn't someone that you weren't like just dating or kicking it with. But this is someone that you're going to spend the rest of your life with. If you're afraid to talk to that person, then you got to do some other soul searching first.
Right. Yeah, I mean, to everything you just said, you know, is really key. One thing I really want to hone in on is the communication aspect of what you were talking about. I mean, and this is coming from somebody who never really was good at open communication. You know, I was somebody who was reserved and, you know, just I guess an introvert, for lack of a better term, in terms of actually opening up to other people. I just didn't really do it. And then I think there's also a nuance there culturally for black men that, you know, we don't openly discuss our feelings. We don't talk about, you know, what's going on with us in depth and, you know, letting things come out. But we really have to get to a point where we can dispel those things, because, you know, as a partner, as a husband, as a significant other, you know, in a relationship, or even as a friend and brother, like you can't really grow unless those lines are open, right? It has to be, you know, just a part of the foundation of the relationship, regardless of what it is. Because, I mean, and then we also have to realize too that communication is not just recognizing and being open to sharing things from our perspective, right? We also have to be open to active listening. And I think a lot of people miss that key point, right? That it's not just about you talking or about you, you know, showing your thoughts and your feelings. It's also you being open to receiving, and especially when it's something that you don't want to hear, right? Or that you don't agree with. One thing that I mentioned in the book is one particular scenario where my wife and I, we were riding in the car, and she told me something, and then a few minutes later, she's like kind of circled back to it, and in so many words, she basically asked me to repeat what she said. And me, I'm like, what? You don't treat me like a kid. I don't have to repeat it. The funny thing is, I really couldn't repeat what she said because I really didn't listen. So I'm like about to start tripping, but I had to think about it and really take a step back and say, hold up, who are you mad at right now? Because you can't actually even bring back the information that she just gave you. So are you really mad at her, or are you mad at the fact that you just didn't listen and she caught you, right? So I was like, yo, man, I really have to do better with that. You know, and just, you know, going back to your point about the communication and how, you know, important and powerful it is, you know, when you are clicking on all cylinders, in, you know, in terms of communication and relationship, like everything else honestly just starts to be easy. And I knock on wood, like, but, you know, in my 5 years with my wife, like, we don't really have arguments. You know, everybody has disagreements, but nothing explodes, nothing blows up, and I think it's just going back again to what you were saying about understanding the other person and, how that communication works, and recognizing who that person is and also knowing yourself. Like, I know me, as somebody who didn't talk a lot, wasn't open, she looked at me early on and said, dude, if this is going to work, you got to talk. And I recognize that in order for her to get what she needed from me, I actually had to speak, right? I had to open my mouth and talk. Whereas, I would, revert back sometimes to being somebody who writes a lot. But that doesn't work, right? That's not what the situation called for. So it was just a matter of, really taking a step back, looking at myself, and then also looking at the relationship for what it was and what I wanted it to be.
I mean, I think you definitely hit on some points that that made me think about something. Like, oftentimes the way that we present ourselves in our relationships and our marriages, a lot of the times it has a lot to do with how we was raised too, going back to those traces and everything else and generational things and what have you. So and this is just me painting the picture. So if a young lady grew up in a house where a husband, mom and dad and siblings and all that, but in the house there wasn't a whole lot of affection shown, it wasn't a lot of emotion shown or what have you, and she grows up to be this young woman, and it doesn't mean that she loves anyone less or what have you. She gets married, finds this man that she loves or what have you, but some of those things kind of still perpetuate in their marriage because she's going off what she's known and what she's used to doing. And so it could be that it feels like you're cold, you're not affectionate, you're not really loving me out loud or what have you. But did you really take time to dig deep into all those things and understand her? Like you said, you have to be in tune to your spouse. You have to be in tune to your significant other to really understand and even know your own, subconscious patterns or behaviors that you don't even know what came from when you were a kid. Right. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of those times I always say that we are essentially big people. We're the baby in a big person. Like, we're that kid in a big person's body, an adult body, and we haven't really uncovered a lot of those things that we never really even knew was a barrier or something that we had to get over, or just didn't even think of, or we just avoided it because we didn't like what we saw. And so a lot of the times it's a lot of the things that happened back in the day that kind of play out in relationships and marriages and friendships or what have you. So we definitely got to make sure that we're taking heed to that context as well.
Facts. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, a huge part of it, is thinking about your environment and what you saw in terms of what a relationship is expected to be and to look like and feel like and sound like. Because it was funny, I was talking to my father not too long ago, maybe a couple weeks ago, and we were talking, I just brought up marriage with him, and I was like, Dad, when did y'all get married? Because for some reason we have that, and I don't know if this is, just stemming back to a certain time or what have you, but we have this thing in our culture a lot of times where it's like people will go together forever, right? Or they'll just be together and then it'll be like, the whole common law idea.
Yep, common law, 7 years.
It's like, we got 6 kids and we've been together 30 years. We might as well just either, at this point, we might as well just go on and do it and get married, or we all right. Like, and I think that's just a situation that's like I don't even know if it's a conversation that happens that often, between the two people. But I was talking to my dad and I was like, yo, when did y'all get married? And they actually got married because my mother actually passed away from cancer, breast cancer, and they got married married like the year before she passed. Like, I think that was just kind of like the end all be all, like, cusp of the situation. Because they were those people that had 6 kids, right? And they had been together since they were, in their teens. And it was just like, why didn't you why hasn't this happened already? You know what I mean? Just like everything else makes sense. Like it's all mapped out. Like the house, the kids, like it's all there. But I say all that to say, like, for me, in my experience, and I guess the way that I viewed marriage, growing up, where I grew up, how I grew up, I didn't really see it a lot, and it was kind of like a Leave It to Beaver type of thing, right? Like, it was just like you see it on TV, and it was just like it just didn't. Not that it didn't seem real, but it wasn't tangible, right? It wasn't like in front of me. I saw love for sure, definitely. I saw what relationships should, feel like, sound like, in my opinion. But in terms of like that all elusive wedding ring, it was just like it just wasn't there up until that point where I think that they got married just because she was sick, and it was getting to a point where it didn't look like she had a lot of time. So I think that was just kind of like the end result of we've been together forever. I don't want you to go on without this. So let's do this. Like, let's go to the courthouse or whatever. But I want to invite you to talk about that perspective on your end as far as growing up, and was it similar to you?
Oh man, yeah. In short, yeah, man. Marriage was something that it seemed like a fairy tale. The only representation of marriage that I had in my life as a young kid was my grandparents being married. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, I mean, that's the only thing I had, like, literally. And but my mom and my dad and my brothers and siblings and my cousins and everything. Like, I mean, I didn't see a whole lot of marriage. Even like in the neighborhood, like you might have saw like people dating, or everybody got what's they call it, Irish brothers and sisters. They all less than a year apart, but they got different daddies and all that stuff. Like, it was all over the place, man. So I didn't see a whole lot of it, but I did know that I wanted it. And I think it's one of those things where it's like that fight or flight type thing. Like, you see something or you don't see something and you really want it because you don't see it, or you don't see something and you're like, I never want to do it. For me, I took the former. Like, I didn't see a whole lot of it, but I knew I wanted to be a family man. I knew I wanted to have a wife. I knew I wanted to have a family. I knew I wanted to have children and build a legacy and do things. And so it's funny, I hope my boys and everybody back home see this, because like they'll tell you, like, I was the one that was pretending out here in these streets. You know what I'm saying? I was acting like I was in these sheets and in these streets and doing all this kind of crazy stuff, but I won't, man. I really wasn't.
Player.
I had to play the part because I wanted to fit in with my boys. But man, family was always something that I wanted, but I never really saw it. And I think, like we talked about a little bit, before, but it's not our fault, but it's our responsibility to make sure that if that's something that we want, we have to chase after it. And we can't let our environment be the excuse or the reason why we never actualize it. And then also, just like being a parent, just like being a father, anything, like there's no perfect book, you know what I'm saying, on how to do it. You know what I'm saying? We thank God that we have, the young black man's husband's handbook to kind of guide us. But even still, like every nook and cranny is not going to be the same. So you ultimately have to chase after it, knowing that every day you're going to have to learn something new. You're going to have to learn your spouse, your partner. You're going to have to learn how to be that leader. You're going to have to learn how to be that active listener. You're going to have to learn to do all those things. But if marriage is what you seek and that's what you truly want, then you will chase after it because it's that important to you. So I didn't see it growing up a whole lot, but I knew I wanted it.
I definitely had an understanding, I think, at kind of like as far as the essence of what I wanted in my life, who I wanted to be. In terms of, as a husband, and then, now as a father as well. But I think one thing that I always kind of go back to is talking about, the representation of everything, right? Is this something that we see on a regular basis? And, thinking about, even going back to, the, praising black women and loving them out loud. This is also something that needs to be normalized, as well in our community. Is just seeing, this positive figure in this role, right? And it can look a lot of different ways, right? We're all different people. The two of us, we're husbands, but we're two completely different men. And the way that we address certain things are going to be different. And of course, our wives are going to be different people. But at the base of it all is those virtues and the things that hold it together are always going to be the same. Like it's always going to come back to your communication, and your appreciation and respect and understanding of the other person. So if you could give a young black man or a young man in general advice, or one solid piece of information that they could basically implement and apply like immediately in their relationship, what would it be?
Ooh, the hot seat. The one bit of advice I can give a husband, I can even give a wife, someone who's thinking about doing this, fiancés who are engaged, is reverence, man. Like revere one another. And I think it sounds really vague, but essentially when you have reverence for your spouse or for your husband or wife or your fiancé, you are considering them in all things. And so if for your specific example, say you talk about communication, it can be reverence in, like you say, typically it doesn't matter if I go out and hang with the boys, but I want to make sure I check in on my wife to see if that's cool, or I need to pay the phone bill, but I got a flat tire, I need to go pick up, but just communicators. I think reverence is like the biggest thing, because it just takes that person into account in all things that you do. You are not only communicating, you are considering their values, their virtues, and you're protecting them. So reverence is like doing of that person and considering of them and protecting their values and virtues at the same time. You know what I'm saying? I use this example a lot because my wife hates the color red, and I love the color red. Yeah. I would love to see my wife walk down and get dressed in a red dress and we go out and have a nice night. But I know that would make her cringe and lose sleep and make her uncomfortable. So in me revering my wife, I would never press upon her to do that, or I would never, buy a dress and be like, you so inappreciative, you don't appreciate what I do for you, because that's not me revering. That's me going against her own virtues, her desires, and her wants. Right. So for any young man, any young woman married or thinking about marriage, I would say reverence should be at the top of your list. And it's easy to do. Just be considerate, be attentive to your spouse, and everything else will just come together.
Facts, yeah. And I'm just going to speak from experience, because that's all we can do. For me, it would definitely be communication. I'm gonna just steal that one, because without that, there can't be any understanding, and without any understanding, you're just going to butt heads, and there's going to be a lot of assumptions made, and then you're going to kind of get stuck, right? There's no growth without that, because all of that's going to be based and grounded in knowledge and understanding, right? Because going back to, me as a person, if I was so set in my ways to say, I'm not going to talk, I'm not going to open up, I'm not going to say how I feel, I'm not going to, say when something's bothering me, or I'm not going to say, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to, open up and really communicate in the way that she would need me to, I would not be married. It's that simple. And if I were married, it wouldn't be to this woman, right? It would be a completely different person, because there was no way that I could get away with it. And I think one thing that, I'd like to really dig into and address a lot of times is that, for me, I know that my wife made me a better person because she required things of me that no one else ever has, right?
Yeah.
Other people would, let me be a recluse and not say anything and just stew in my own nerves and sorrows or whatever. But she was like, nah, bro, this has to happen. And if you want this, you got to do this, right? In order to have something that you've never had, you got to do something that you've never done.
Never done before.
You know what I mean? And to that regard and to her credit, the communication aspect is definitely one of those things where, I had to, right? I had to, even now, when I'm doing certain things, take the podcast, for example. Like, if I don't say I'm planning to do this, then it creates a situation where the lines of communication are not open, and, little issues and, I guess, kind of negativities can kind of swipe in and then create a problem, which nobody wants. Just, the little things. Hey, I'm going to go do this. Do you need anything? Just simple, basic, communication. I mean, I don't think that over communicating actually exists at this point. I mean, you could just, even if you don't think it's going to be important, say it anyway. Tell them anyway. Yep. Make sure they know. And this is for men and women both. Communication for sure will definitely be at the core of what I believe in this regard. With that being said, I just want to say again, thank you to everybody for tuning in. Come back, check us out. The next episode of the Facts Podcast. That is faith, action, culture, truth, and solidarity.
And that's facts.
Monte, love you, bro. Catch you next time.
Lay 2 down.
Peace.
See y'all. Peace, man.
Just continue to push forward, continue to know that you have purpose, and continue to fulfill your dreams and your passions, and everything else will fall into place.